The Libombo border post is partially operational following post-election violence in the neighboring country. The Border Management Authority's Commissioner, Dr. Mike Masiapato, explains.
First thing to indicate is that after very extensive engagement with our Mozambican counterpart, they had actually gave us assurance that they have deployed the military on their side to be able to make sure that the situation is stabilized. So on that basis, they did confirm to us that we can actually reopen the port partially. So what actually is happening now is that the port is reopened primarily to allow the Mozambicans that had been on the South African side that are intended to go back home. So on that basis, we are busy processing them as we speak, and they're actually going back home, as it were. But in terms of the trucks that are still on this side, on the corridor, we are not taking them through that side because their guarantee did not cover the issues of the trucks, as it were. They had confirmed that they will be, in a way, escorting their people into the country, and they will basically make sure that there is a safe passage for them. Now, in terms of the return, they are also agreeing that they will actually allow South African empty trucks that are meant to come back into South Africa, and on that basis, we are able to process those ones in. So that is basically the partial reopening up to this point, and of course, we are still assessing the situation, and we should be able to take a decisive decision given what is going to be the results of this process.
All right, joining us for more on the situation in Mozambique is Venitia Govender, social justice activist. Venitia, good evening and thank you very much for joining us on the program. So it seems some citizens in Mozambique are unrelenting, rejecting the election results in that country. Your views on all that we've been seeing?
And I think we saw, on the 24th when the election results were announced, the opposition didn't accept the results and called for widespread protests across the country. And we've seen for the last 2 weeks there's been stayaways, non-stop demonstrations across the country. And tomorrow is meant to culminate in a large rally. So individual protests and rallies across the country culminating in the week-long stayaway that was called for by the opposition. I think even though these issues were rising in Mozambique for a while, last year's local government elections, there were similar concerns and allegations about fraud and the manipulation of the electoral result. I think the sustained and the spread of the protests, and it's growing across the country, that one wonders what tomorrow may be like. I think, as you've heard in the clip just before, some of the military has been probably deployed to take people across from the border, and I would imagine also try and respond to some of the protests in the country tomorrow. I'm not sure how that'll go, and I think the big concern is that as of yesterday, there were already 16 people killed, over 100 that were shot and injured, and tomorrow may add to those numbers. Doesn't look like the protests are subsiding. Doesn't look like government is engaging the protesters. I think that's the other issue, is it's the insidious silence, not just from SADC or countries in the neighboring countries, or even some of the politicos, the high-profile former presidents in Mozambique haven't said anything, and I think for me that's really concerning.
With the African, pardon me for interjecting there, but with the African National Congress, they've since released a statement indicating that talks are ongoing for some sort of a peaceful resolution there. Is that satisfactory, though, given that you're stating that at least 16 people have already lost their lives? Does it need more than just a statement indicating that talks are now ongoing with Frelimo?
Yeah, I think it's going to require more than just a statement saying that talks are ongoing. I think the protesters are expecting something from within government in Mozambique. A direct statement. I mean, so far the protesters have been ignored. The response has been very heavy-handed with the police, with the army, live ammunition being used. And we've seen that the protesters seem to have lost their fear. and are not going to accept anything less than maybe some direct address from within the Mozambican government.
But it seems a lot of reports, or at least not enough reports, are coming out of Mozambique, because some have even stated that social media communication has to a certain extent been limited.
Yeah, during this period, there's been at least 5 times that the internet has been shut down. And I think, you know, these protests are also very dependent on the internet. And there's another fear that, you know, the issue of fake news, that also could be driving on social media. But there has been a clampdown, and a very big clampdown in the very recent period. So that's a concern, because we're not getting enough information.
But the little that you are getting, is it enough, at least on your part as social activists?
No, it's not enough. I mean, we're trying very hard to speak to activists on the ground, and it's very difficult to even carry out a 5-minute conversation. It's difficult. There's no connectivity, and activists are running helter-skelter. There's been high levels of repression. So it's not that easy getting information and being able to verify it. You know, it's one thing getting the information, to be able to find the evidence and to verify it is another thing. And there are not enough organizations or agencies that are collecting this kind of data.
Venitia, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Very concerning story indeed. Venitia Govender, social justice activist and independent development consultant.